Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're looking today at courage.
So welcome to DUZIE Live. Our theme for today is courage in the midst. So whatever you're in the midst of, whatever you are in the middle of, it's time for courage.
It is time for courage. My name is Dan.
My name is Suzie, and together we're a DUZIE.
And we welcome you to this very special hour where we are looking really at how do we live with courage in the midst of whatever is going on. There's a lot going on in our world right now. Yesterday, just being on the phone with different people, hearing some fears, hearing concerns, not knowing what the news is going to say tomorrow.
That's right.
There's a lot of fear.
Change is happening.
A couple weeks ago, we looked at observe your fear. And it's really important right now that we look around and say, what are these fears that are good? And what are those ones that are holding us back from the flow? God is not surprised with what's going on right now. And we need to make sure that we're still living life to the full. And one way we do that is through courage.
Right. So don't get rid of the fear. Fear helps take us some of the next steps towards courage, and more importantly, towards the actions that are appropriate for us, that are based on values that we find from fear. And we're going to talk about all of that today. But first, let's start with courage. What is courage? The definition says courage is the ability to do something that frightens one. So when you're afraid, we don't get stuck. You know, there are responses to fear. When fear comes our way naturally, then there are some responses to it. One of the response fears is to fight. Another is to fly or get away. Another is to freeze. And another is to just fall.
Just stop.
So those are responses to fear. We don't want to be taken over by fear. We want to be able to have courage and to take action, even in the midst of what's going on. Sometimes we say, do it afraid. We're going to talk about what you can do to build a courageous mindset, what types of fears, what areas of fears, and we're going to talk about it, and we'd love to have you join in the conversation.
So if you're on live with us, what we want you to do, just let us know who you are, who's in the room with us. If you're getting this on a later replay, you can, if you're doing it through our course, you can send us questions as you go through it. We would love to have those questions. Our time here is not about how much information can we give. This is about formation. And formation, I believe, takes a community. We have to sort of breathe. We're going to speak out some things. We would love you speaking back. And those of you who've been on before, you know that if you're on Chrome and if you have a microphone and headset, you can push the hand button and come on, and we can actually talk face to face. This is very rich for the whole community.
You can tell your story. You can ask a question. You could just be on with us and have a little bit of a chat, and the community can enjoy it.
And we would ask as well that if anytime along the way the volume isn't right or there's an echo, please take time to write that in, because we can't hear that from where we're at, and you are the mirror back to us.
Yeah. So another definition of courage, the second definition, is strength in the face of pain or grief. So you have the ability to do something that frightens one and having strength in the midst of it. Our key verse for this whole courage theme that we're going on is Joshua 1:9, and it says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God will be with you. And I think that's foundational. The Lord is with us, and strong and courageous go together, and we're not supposed to be afraid. So when we are afraid, we need to move it towards the strong and courageous action behaviors.
I'm just taking a moment and going online myself, make sure everything's good, and so we can continue on. I just want to make sure that I'm connected here as well as here.
So we're seeing it right from the back end and the front end. Yeah. So one of the questions we just want to put out there is, what do you need courage for? We know the coronavirus is in the midst right now at the time of the recording. And as Dan said, things are changing day after day and after day. And for us, many years ago, we lived in the country of Poland. And when we first moved in there in 1988, it was the time when it was still communist. And in 1990, it was transitioning into a democracy. And we lived in a day and age that's very similar to this day and age where everything changed. For example, when we went to the store to buy butter or milk or bread, every single day, the price doubled in that time of transition. And what's going on with the shelves and food and toilet paper in our current day and age with the coronavirus going on, it reminds us of that. And so some of the same techniques of just pressing into God and staying tight with your family, your community net is going to be really important in this season of life as well.
So as we move into this area of courage in the midst, we would love to hear what are some of the fears maybe that are facing you or your community. Yesterday, we had people sending us from around the world photos of shelves in their store. And there was nothing on them. The funniest picture for me was there was a shelf that was empty, and right behind it was a shelf of ice cream that was full. I guess in these days where there's a little bit of fear going on, we don't need ice cream, but we need everything else.
Do you need ice cream?
I always need ice cream.
Dan loves ice cream.
I want to say hello to Matt. I'm glad Matt. You are here. This is going to be a great discussion as we look at be strong and courageous.
And thank you for that connection call out like that. Hi, Megan. Welcome. Megan was one of the ones that sent us very interesting empty shelf photos. How are you doing, Megan? We'd love to hear from you guys in the chat, from those in the replay. What are some of the fears that are facing you and your community? Very important to identify our fears and take that a little bit further.
But today isn't just about fears, it's about courage.
That's right.
And this week and last week, I have been doing so much study in scripture and in books and in videos. What does this whole courage thing look like? And I just got to tell you, I was studying the Bible, and some of you may have heard this last week, but I can't get over the fact that when it talks about courage, it's talking about something. It's not talking about an attitude. It's not talking about a feeling. It's something more than that. And I'm not really sure if it is a noun or if it's a verb. I don't know all that. But here's some of the things it says. I'm just going to go through and read some of these because I think they're very important when we look at courage. That courage is something that can fail. They no longer had courage. They lost courage. But then it also in another verse says they found courage. They took courage. Take courage. Courage melted away. Courage endures. Stir up. I love this one. Stir up courage. It takes me into a kitchen. Stir that baby up. Get that thing going.
Brownies. Yum.
They saw the courage. It was something you could see. Keep up your courage. So it's something you have to continue on with. It isn't just like, okay, I have a paper. No, it's something you keep up. And this one's very interesting. I'm still looking at this from Philippians 1:20. Have sufficient courage.
Wow.
So there must be different levels of courage as well. 19 times courage comes in. 13 of those times it is directly connected with be strong and courageous.
Courageous.
It's a very interesting connection that strength and courage go together. And I love this in 2 Chronicles. It talks about the courageous priests of the Lord. These priests had courage, and it was actually part of what the Bible describes them as priests with courage.
Yeah.
I love it. So it's on and on here. And I don't know what to really call courage. It's one of those things I keep saying, Susie, what is it? I'm talking to other people.
What do you think? Is it a noun? Is it a verb? What would you say it is? And while you're thinking, I would just like to read some of the comments here. So one says, I was in the supermarket and I heard someone in the ice cream section say, I'm not facing the end of the world without ice cream. Okay, another call out for ice cream. Thanks. Matt says, what do I need courage for? I think I still need courage to be a good witness to my friends, especially when it comes to talking openly about faith. Yes. I think it's really obvious that people in our culture have an obvious, whoops, it just moved. I think it's really obvious that people in our culture have an ethic and morality that is very different to them, and the Christian ideals are offensive. I find it hard to even start a conversation about faith because of the fear of pushing people away. Thank you, Matt.
I would love to speak to that because I think we feel, at least I feel, sometimes as followers of Jesus, we have to be something different than who we are. We have to be like the answer person.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's what Jesus was. Jesus, if you study the Gospels, he was the storyteller. He was very quick to talk about those religious leaders that were there to steal, kill, and destroy. But when it came to people, he was the shining light in the room. Mm-hmm. He brought that light, and he had courage to be himself. And Matt, I think I grew up in a church that very much was, you've got to have the right information.
The right words to say.
You've got to make sure that the world somehow believes the way you believe.
Yeah.
But we never really stopped too long to talk about, well, who is it that God created me to be? And how do we show up in that area? I follow a few Christians who are a little bit in a different place than I am. And it's always interesting to me to see them just show up and just be in places and with people that's like, oh, is that okay? Mm-hmm. I think it takes courage to live your life. It doesn't take courage to live someone else's life, or it doesn't take that much courage to live a culture that is totally accepted. But to step into your world, Matt, or anyone else, and be you, whether it's with college students or at your workplace or on the bus. I think sometimes we're driven by guilt that we have to always produce something. I would challenge from the life of Jesus that he didn't spend a whole lot of time producing anything. He poured his life into people. And when he walked around, people came to him, not because he was ready for an argument, because in him was life. And this is what I would say. If I could go back 20, 30, 40 years in my life, that's one of the main things I would change is, how do I just show up? How do I show up and listen? How do I show up and hear what's not being said in a person's life? I mean, this is not any condemnation of anything we have today, but I think courage would take us much farther than, do you believe like I do? We can't show up and say, where are we different? I think we have to show up and find those similarities and have the courage to step into their world and make it brighter.
Yeah. So there's a number of other people who are popping on here. Welcome. We want to welcome you to Courage in the Midst, our DUZIE Live. And we've put out a question here. And the question is, what are some of the fears that are facing you and your community? We would love to hear. We are remembering from Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. The Lord your God is with you, will be with you. He is with us. And courage is the ability to do something that frightens one. So we're starting with fear, continuing with fear, because that is a basis that we take further. So Michaela, thanks for being here. She said, I need courage to stand firm in my faith when ridiculed for having one by my friends. Very similar to what Matt said. Thank you for sharing. Megan says, when sharing faith with my friends, I just make it part of my conversation. So with all the chaos happening now, I let people know I'm praying for people. Yeah. And it's accepted because we already have that relationship of support for each other. Thanks, Megan. That's such a great reminder, because that is one way that we can do it. And Richard Sharp has a whole, he's got a bracelet encouragement, and it's called One Wish. And his question is, if you could have one wish from God for you right now, what would it be? And that opens up a spiritual sector for people to be able to talk about what they wish for, what they're dreaming for. And it gives an opening. And then you can say, would you mind if I pray for you right now? Mm. And I started doing that when appropriate. You can say, I'm praying for you. And you could say, would you mind if I pray for you right now? That's a great lead in to make that connection to spirituality and for the hope that we have, and for the Lord being with us as we're strong and courageous and not being afraid.
I think one of the things that we need to work at as being courageous people in the midst, being people of light, is, I would say, one of the number one characteristics or skills that we need to have is that of a storyteller.
Yeah.
Jesus was talking about the kingdom of God is coming, and he picked up a seed. And he started talking about a seed and a lost son and a lost coin. He was a storyteller because in his culture, they were so used to sitting down in front of Netflix and watching stories. No, but
they didn't have Netflix.
We live in a story culture. And one of the greatest things we can do is not come along with the information, but create a story or lay out a story that creates hunger. I think we live in a world, and I think the virus is causing some hunger. It's causing some questions for sure. But we need to actually cultivate that hunger. Because most people, let me see where it is. You've maybe seen this before. This is my Jesus Band-Aids. Mm-hmm. I would say it's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever bought in my life. I was in Las Vegas, and I was in a store, and this was on the cupboard. And I thought, Jesus adhesive bandages, free toy inside. I got to have that. But then I looked underneath, $6.95. I thought, there's no way for 15 bandages I'm going to pay. Well, I did. And I got home and I unwrapped it. And inside, ooh, there was a little tiny Jesus. And there were little Band-Aids with pictures of Jesus. And right there and then, oh, that matches my shirt. Right there and then, I thought, this is the craziest thing I've ever bought. But oftentimes in Christianity, this is what we're selling people. We're selling them, okay, I have this good luck charm called Jesus, and he'll make your life all better. This is like a ticket into heaven. And if anything goes wrong, he'll fix it. Well, you know what? Things go wrong a lot. The disciples did not have a get out of jail free card, and neither do we. This is a crazy little gimmick, but Jesus and walking with Jesus is a unfolding story.
Yeah.
It's like those series you watch on TV, and it's like
episode after episode.
What's going to happen next? And I think sometimes we go right to the last season, the last episode, and we say, here it is. But we don't take people on the journey.
Okay, Megan, I just saw, sorry that you have your hand up, so go for it. You know how to get into the system. Let's see. Megan says, right now, I am a part of a group that's getting together to help people affected by coronavirus. We've posted leaflets through people's doors, offering help, a listening ear, help with shopping. By doing that, I'm demonstrating that I'm a person that helps and is supportive, which means I can share more of myself later down the road. So Megan's trying to pop into our room. Thank you, Megan. Let's see if we can get you in our space.
Hey,
there
Megan.
You are.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm working from home today, so I had to look kind of smart for when I was on calls with people from work. Otherwise,
yes, well, you are smart. Not only do you look smart, you are smart.
We're working from home as well today as well.
Okay, so you kind of set it up there for us. You're doing leaflets. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
So there was a face group set up by some people in London, basically for their neighborhood to say, elderly people or older people who might have to self-isolate. We just want to put together people that can maybe help them and assist them. Maybe people can do some extra shopping for them or can do stuff like that. Anyway, it's exploded over the whole country. So there was one for my area for Sheffield, and then it's shrunk down to little different parts of Sheffield. So the area that I live in is called Crooks. And then they were looking for road coordinators, so people to basically look after the road that you live on, put a leaflet through people's doors, basically saying, if you'd like to join a WhatsApp group and volunteer to help, if you want somebody to give you a call, if you want somebody to pick up any medicine that you need, if you need that, this is what's there for your road, and this is who your coordinator is. Wow. And I think that's a great thing to be able to sort of do practically. I think right now, so many people are scared. They don't know what's going to happen. They're scared of dying. They're scared of people they know dying. And I think there's a real hunger for spirituality and for Christ. But I think it needs to be done in the right way. So I'll tag you guys in a Facebook post that a friend of mine from Oasis did. And she just basically recorded a blessing for people. And she posted it on her Facebook page. And it was just very calming. It was just a prayer for peace for people. And it was so many people have shared it because it's just like, actually, that's really nice. It's not saying this is how you come to Jesus. You've got to pray this prayer or go to this church. But it's just like, I know right now people are probably scared. Here's just something very peaceful and just something that maybe you can think of it as a meditative way. I mean, something like that we could share on our Facebook page saying, I know people are scared right now. Here's a blessing that, I'd like to share with you, or I'd like to pray Psalm 23, and I'm just going to record it and put it on my Facebook page. If it's of interest to you, I'm happy for you to share it. If it's of not, sending love out there anyway. And it's just I think a way of being supportive to people, not trying to push any kind of agenda on people, but just to say, I'm here on the end of the call if you need it, or I'm like able and fit and healthy, and so if you need any food delivery or something, or can I bring over some brownies and drop them outside your door, something like that. I think little things like that. I mean, as much as Jesus told stories and talked to people, he also got fish for the fishermen. He fed the 1,000 or the 4,000, depending which gospel you read. He healed people. He did practical things, and that made people kind of go, wait, I want to know more about this Jesus guy. Or I've heard about him. He's, he talked to the, Samaritan woman, or, he healed that guy at the gate that had been there for 40 years and who was blind. And, so I think doing practical things for people, or putting things like, here's a psalm that's been useful for me, and just putting it on your Facebook and saying, I don't know if this would be helpful to people, but it's just something that maybe people would find comforting in this time of crisis.
Yeah.
So many people, there's so much confusion. I mean, I know there is here in the UK, there's so much confusion. Nobody quite knows what's going on. Nobody quite knows what's happening. There's a lot of panic as faced by the supermarkets. The things people are panic buying is a bit crazy. But, so just being a comforting presence, or just even a settled, peaceful presence is really useful for people.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll just say that you are welcome to bring brownies to my house. That's a good thing.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. This is a great example of courage in the midst. I wonder, what is your part? Are you by any chance a street leader?
Yes, I am the street coordinator.
Excuse me.
My street. And then I've just started a new job at the university. The university doesn't know what it's doing. We were told to work from home today. Then we were told maybe we need to be in work tomorrow. So I'm just trying to be helpful to people, let them know about different technologies that I know about. So things like webinars and stuff like that.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great, Megan. Thank you for the reminder of being hands and feet of Jesus and just being there for people. And also, good job, because that's a great use of your organizational and caring for people. You're using your strengths. You're just popping up and you're being strong and courageous and helping people not be afraid, just like we've been talking about here. That's awesome.
One thing I love about what you're saying is I think sometimes we're taught that, okay, this is what I have, and you got to make sure everyone gets this. So here you go, open up. And what you're saying is maybe we should go out and find out what they need before we pull out the pill. Yeah. And I think that is such a really a courageous thing, because that means you have to connect. Too often this is not about connection, but what you're talking about, you are actually connecting with the hearts of people. What do you need? How can I serve you? Rather than this moment is about serving me. Yeah. That's beautiful. Thanks.
And I think you need to remember, it's not about the numbers. Sometimes I've been on churches where it's about how many people can we get into our church. And it's at times like this that actually sometimes the church really can either shine or really just like be a disaster. When churches open their doors and say, come in, if you want to just sit quietly, or if you want to light a candle, or, we're putting on meals if anybody wants to come and collect something. That's when the church just really shows what it's all about. And then you've got other people and it's all about the numbers and how can we, send out, the end of the world is nigh, repent, and all this stuff. I'm just like, that's not helpful for people. So it's like you say, it's meeting people where their needs are at. Jesus didn't say to the Samaritan woman, right, so 1, you're a woman, so I can't really talk to you. 2, you've got to repent of this, and this before I will talk to you. He's just like, you're at the well, can I get some water? It's meeting her where she's at, and then
that's right.
Conversation, and then her going, wow, with all of this, I want to change. Not because he said you have to change, but she's just like, this is making me think about my life.
And the thing I love about this, Megan, is for years, it's been my parents' age group that served everyone. They go into the community. They are the ones that have time to do this. And now it's those people who are at home. They would love to be out serving people, but they're at home, and it's time for the next generation to really step up and take that mantle of you served us for years. Now it's our turn. Please stay at home. Let us serve you. And I love the fact that that's the stuff that's coming out now.
Yeah. And I also loved what you said. Jesus did it. And this is our picture as well. Meet them where they're at. Yeah. I think that's so vital. Yeah. I was just listening to a training last night by a lady called Susan David. I never heard her before. And she was talking about emotional agility. And I just loved it. It's speaking of what you're talking about, because many people, they do something with what their emotions are coming up with. Sometimes people brew and it gets hot and they get a little bit angry. Some bottle it. They just close it up. Some try to project a false positivity. We're going to make it through. But she really encourages people to understand and find out what their emotions are. And you spoke to this. Hi, do you just need somebody to talk to? Maybe somebody just needs to talk out whatever they're experiencing. Because as we understand our emotions, then we can understand what values are coming out from that. And the emotions and the values together are really important. Like, Why am I so disturbed about this? Because people don't have what they need. And so we might have a value of caring for people in the midst of their needs. And I think that's very interesting, because then when we have courage, our actions are based on our courage. So we don't just like have courage and then just like, you know, like those cartoons that get their feet running all in place and they're running like the road runner, but they're not going anywhere. But they have action based on what they value, what they believe. And you identify that by looking at your emotions or what you're feeling at the moment.
Thanks, Megan, for coming out. You reminded me of one other thing, is that perhaps one of the greatest needs people have at the moment is somebody.
Yeah.
As people are home, there is going to be probably the thing that's going to come out of this the most is loneliness.
Oh, yeah.
And how can we
isolation,
even call as many people as we can, not just text, but really call and let people talk.
The personal touch.
That's something that hit me as well from what you said.
Yeah. Can I just respond to something that Matt said?
Yeah.
Matt said, I also think there comes a point where people have to be confronted with the stark option of who is Lord of their life, them or Jesus. I'm not sure I agree with that, Matt, but I think that's something that God does. I don't think that's something for us to do. Just leaving that out there.
Good. Thanks, Megan.
Take
Great.
care.
Thanks, Megan.
About getting brownies to you.
All right.
Thank you for joining us and for going out into your community and using your gifts. Great to have you on DUZIE Live. Thank you so much.
All right. I think this is.
Yeah, I just want to say a little bit more. One of the quotes that Susan David had at the end was, courage is not the absence of fear. It's fear walking. And how can we take that into our world? It's fear walking. So as we have our fears and we're trying to like go out and to be in the space where people are afraid or we're afraid, how can we identify that, know where we are presently with our emotions and our feelings and checking them to truth and seeing if this is a fear that's protecting us or a fear that we should take those steps to get over, and then going forward with that based on our values.
We got another comment there, Suze. You want to read that one?
You want me to read it? Thanks, Dan, for what you said. I think that's right. It's about being genuine. It's about connecting and meeting people where they're at. That is generally my natural leaning, but I also think that there comes a point where people have to be confronted with the stark option of who is Lord of their life, them or Jesus.
Yeah, and I think this is what Megan was referring to from what you said, Matt. And I agree that every coin has two sides. There is a point of stepping out and saying, I am not telling you what to do. I'm just here to love you. But they're also, how will people know unless the truth is given? And so there is a truth. So it may be a confrontation. For me, I would rather it not be a confrontation. I think Jesus, his confrontations was more with the religious leaders that had really twisted the truth, where he spoke truth to the sinner. He said, neither do I condemn you. Now go and sin no more. There is truth coming out there. And I'm not saying, well, you never say strong truth. I believe there is a point for that. The Bible is very, very strong. And yet many people have different views of it. I would probably go from the point of, how do you see this? Mm-hmm. And start off where they're at, rather than coming in with the snowplow approach that you don't know everything, I know everything, bring it in. Sometimes it's like what I think it was Paul, I don't know if it was Paul or Peter, when they were in Athens and they came to the altar of the unknown God. There was this, that's an altar. That's an altar to someone who's not God. And yet he had the truth. He could have preached a message right there, but he said, I've come to explain the God who is unknown to you.
Yeah, because that's where they were at.
He used their world in their place.
Space.
And he came on an intellectual area, which is where they were. I think that is a beautiful thing that we need to relearn how to step in. And what's the game you're playing? Or what's the philosophy? Or what's this? And rather than running in and condemning it, how do we take that? And connect? I think everything can be connected to Jesus.
Yeah.
How do we be wise to do that?
Yeah, so we've been talking a little bit about spiritual and about social courage. I just want to have a quick list here of 6 types of courage. There are many more than that. And these 6 types of courage and a bit more talking about it are inside our course. The next module.
The course is flow.
The course is flow, and the module is courage. Do you want to explain how we broke those up a little bit for those who are taking the course?
Yeah, originally we went from focus on the Father to lean into your observe your fear, and then we were going to do walk in courageous imagination. And the more we studied it, wow, this is huge. So we've taken module 4 to be on courage. Module 5 is going to be on imagination, and module 6 is going to be on courageous imagination. We're gonna take some time and really look at courage, and we filmed all that. That should be online pretty soon. And then we're going to look at imagination, and we're going to pull them together in module 6. And maybe there'll be a module 7 pulling it all together, because the more we look at this, the more all of this is one package, not 6 separate things, one way to live.
Yeah. So for those of you who are taking our course or who have taken our course, the first course, Relaunch Your Life, was about life, living fully alive, and what are our rhythms and our values that come together to support that life, as well as our community net that is also our supporting people and people we support. And then in passion, we live who God made us, relentlessly pursuing that, and we have a ripple effect on people. Flow is what Dan just talked about, and we're currently in courage, and we can take it longer, and we want to take it longer because courageous imagination is our theme for this year. And I think that's why courage is so important. Last week, we had John Mark Earl here on DUZIE Live, and he was talking about his ice bath and his dipping. Dan's been editing that, and that will soon come online in an edited version for us to hear more about that.
Hey, Suze, I know you're going to do it, but there's a good discussion going on right here. You go ahead. Take it. Okay. This is good.
Okay.
Start right down here with Matt.
Okay, we got some sparring going on here.
This is great.
Matt says, I don't mean that it should be a confrontation or confrontational, but that by its nature, the gospel message starts with an uncomfortable message of, I am not king and I am in need of saving. That is the offense of the gospel, which is hard enough without even being confrontational. And Megan says, oh, I'd love to have a long chat with you about this. And Matt says, it's a long walk in courageous imagination then. I'd love to chat more about it.
You can take brownies over there or something. But this
maybe because we're having self-isolation or social isolation, you guys could just have a phone call or a Skype or something.
But this is the tension of the gospel.
This is good, guys.
What I love about it is you have this, there is truth, but there is also a life.
Yeah.
You have nothing to say. You have no truth to say if you're not living the life. You have to have that light. They will know we are Christians by our love. At the same time, they will not know truth without us proclaiming it. And sometimes we argue here or we argue here, but we look and we say, wait, this is part of the same coin. It's just 2 different sides, which makes it very rich. It takes me back to Ecclesiastes. There is a time for war. No, not war. There is a time for peace. There's a time to save your clothes. There's a time to tear them. All these things go together as one, but the political parties or the different ideologies want to rip that coin apart. A coin with one side does not exist. It simply can't be. And so hopefully what we're going to do is we're going to blow some air into these coins and realize that it's not flat. It's round.
It's a world.
The coin, it grows as we get involved, and we can start seeing all sides,
all perspectives
of the coin, and realize, yep.
Megan, I see you give me permission to share your details with Matt. I will do that. Matt, if you're okay, I can share your details with Megan, or you can just reach out to her if you're willing to do that. And you can have a long, courageous imagination walk.
Here we have another comment from Cheryl. Mama.
She says, I think you really hit the problem. We who are told we have to stay home. We want to go out and find people who are in need. We are in need.
It bounced around there.
Oh, yeah, sorry. It is very hard to sit at home and not worry about those who need a helping hand. We are finding it is taking courage to stay home and pray that needs are being met, and being thankful we are able to stay put. So Don and Cheryl are in that over 80 years old category. They're encouraged to stay home. They would normally be the ones out everywhere in the street, in the community. They know everybody, and they know those people who actually need it. And this time they have to stay home. And as I understand, they have people coming to them and serving them and meeting their needs, because they've been amazing examples of that. So thank you for that. And yes, of course, it will take courage for you to stay put.
And I just want to read the verse. I've been posting this. This is now the verse that I'm trying to memorize. And when I'm washing my hands, I say this verse. But it's this from Philippians 4. And this is for you, Mom, and for everyone else. This is all the way around every coin. Rejoice in the Lord always. I say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all, because the Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything with prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the God of peace, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your mind. Oh, do we need that? Do we need our hearts and minds guarded right now? Yes, we do. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. To me, that I come back to that several times a day in the midst of a new news report or something. It's like, oh no, wait. Don't be anxious about anything. Take that to God.
Yeah. Michaela says, if we're to meet people where they're at and with truth and love, how do we do that if they don't want to be reached? How can we build them up with Jesus' love if they want absolutely nothing to do with it? Oh, yeah, that's such a reality, such a truth. I think we don't have to push Jesus, but Jesus is love. And when we are living, this is the fully alive revolution that we're talking about. When we are individually living fully alive in our gifts, in our abilities, in our strengths, having those rhythms, values, the love of Jesus poured into us, we are the light of the world. We are the salt of the earth. Even if we are not allowed, because they limit us, to say things about God, we can show the character of God. We can show the fruit of God's Spirit in and through us as we are peace giving and as we're bringing love and serving and having all these gifts and abilities. So if people are limiting you in what you say, you can still live brightly. You can live fully alive, and that is going to have ripple effects of life.
Let me tell you a story about Latorius. I met Latorius in prison.
Oh, yeah, this is
Latorius. We went into a prison for a couple days, and we were doing something where we spent a day with the fathers and helped them understand what it means to be a father, even in prison. And then the next day, we were involved in bringing their children to the prison to give them a day of working together. Well, every person that came in was assigned an inmate. And I was doing some things. And so when I got to sit down, there was one chair left, and it was next to Latorius. Now, Latorius, he looked like every terrorist you would ever see. Very scary guy.
The stereotypical one, whatever that is.
I was like, okay, I need to go sit there. There's only one chair left. It was next to him. And as I was going there, someone just grabbed me and they said, oh, you're sitting next to Latorius, and he is the head of the Muslim Brotherhood here in the prison, just to let you know. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. So I sit next to him. We have nothing in common. Nothing in common. He was looking one way. I was the other way. And it was like, oh, man, what do I do? And I just said, God, give me some way to connect with this child of yours. He may not be interested, but give me some way to connect. I reached down in my pocket and I pulled out my little black notebook, which I carry with me everywhere, in my pen. Like I was going to lean over and say, excuse me, what is your name? And just write the name down. He turned and he looked at my book, and his eyes just got so big. And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out a book identical to mine.
2 black books.
And he said, this is incredible. You have the same book that I have. I said, yes. And then he looked at me and he says, are you a writer? I says, yes, I'm an author. I've written 2 books. He said, I'm working on my first book right now. And then he says, I love the drama part of writing. And I says, well, I do too. I write dramas. And we started talking, and we became so close in those 2 days. Matter of fact, when his children came in, I was there the next day, and he turned to his children and he said, listen, and they were probably 14 and 12 years old. And he said to them, what this guy has to say when he gets up to speak, you need to listen to him because it is true. Oh, wow. I did not speak to him one word individually about my beliefs. I just lived my life next to him. And something happened in him that he would even say to his children, from my time of loving him, listen to him. What he says is true. Sometimes we don't know how those little things make a huge difference.
Yeah, and part 2 of that story is he was a part of a group inside the prison called Shakespeare Behind Bars. This was an amazing experience. So it was a follow-up ripple effect of us going back in there. And this group was a group that sat around in a circle, and they had to memorize some part of Shakespeare, get up and perform it, and tell of why that piece, why they chose that piece and what it meant to in their life. And here were these men who were telling stories, beautifully reciting Shakespeare, and then telling stories of why that meant something to them. And it was such a follow-up just from spending day being interested and trying to find connection points like that.
And Michaela, one of the things I would say is a skill that we need to learn today as followers of Jesus is not the art of answers. I think the world is very quick to reject our answers. We need to learn the art of questions. What? How? Really draw out for them what's inside of them. And we connect somewhere there. Not asking questions to find out where we're different, as I said, but find out a place that we can connect. Yeah. And I believe the New Testament talks about this connection point. And we need to find that place. And then from there, we start building something. But I think today, especially in the world we live in, if we come in as we have the answers, well, we don't. We don't. Look around. We don't have the answers. But we can ask questions to draw from people some of those pains, some of those questions, some of those concerns that we can even say, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Yeah. And then we almost guaranteed at some point a door is going to be open a little bit that we can step in and say, how do we answer some of those questions for ourselves?
So I'm going to put up a poll now while we carry on. 10 being high and 1 being low. How do I rate my courage? Right now, how would you rate your courage? So you can go ahead and fill out that poll, and let's see where we're at. Meanwhile, I want to talk about the 6 types of courage. And I won't go into too much depth because we do that a little bit deeper in the flow course. But you can have physical courage, which is bravery at the risk of bodily harm or death. You can have social courage, a risk of social embarrassment, exclusion, unpopularity, or rejection. That's my worst one. Intellectual. You can engage in challenging ideas, question our thinking, and have courage even to make mistakes. We're having some good challenging idea moments right here. You could have moral courage, doing the right thing when risks involve shame, oppression, disapproval of others. You can have emotional courage, being opening yourself to feel the full spectrum of positive emotions at the risks of encountering negative ones as well. And you can have spiritual questions, grappling with questions about faith, purpose, and meaning. We're doing that as well right now.
Yeah. So how do you respond to any of those? I mean, for me, Suzie said hers was more social.
Well, no, just the rejection. The rejection is a big deal
side
for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to spend a little bit of time thinking of those things. You don't have that printed up somewhere, do you?
Yeah, inside the course.
Okay.
Inside the course, we talk about it, and there'll be a list of that. So that will be a downloadable PDF for you, as well as a bit of a training on that.
So I think right now, for me, when I look at this list, I'm probably at the spiritual, having courage to re-examine what I believe and who is this Jesus in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of us go through phases in our life, and I'm not going to throw everything out. I'm not going to reconstruct as far as bring in the bulldozer and get rid of everything. But I think there's times that it's time to change the windows, or it's time to repaint this somehow. And I think I'm giving myself the courage to examine things that I never thought of before. Not that I'm going to grab them all, but I'm asking a lot of questions because the world keeps changing, and the way we see things today is going to be different than we saw them 10 years ago. Yeah. And so I think I am in the place that I need courage in that area.
Yeah. So I wonder if we just go into building a courageous mindset. This is inside the course, but let me see.
Anything else we need to pick up there before we go?
You're an inspiration, Dan Potter. And Matt says,
sorry, I can't see them from here. That's why
the fear of rejection is a big one for Matt, and for a lot of people thanking Dan Potter. That's awesome.
Keep reading those.
Okay, I'm gonna let's see.
Slide.
Where is the file? I'm gonna put up a sharing. This is a worksheet, and I'm going to share it with you, but we're going to talk you through it right now.
This has really helped me in the last couple of days as we've gone through courage and the whole thing of the courageous mindset.
So this is building a courageous mindset. We're going to do very broad strokes because inside the flow course, within a couple of days, it will be released. But we want to just help you get there. And I will be courageous. So it's talking about building a courageous mindset. And then there's a lot of coaching questions for you in these white spaces. So a note about mindsets. Colossians 3:1-2 tells us to set our hearts and our mind on things above with God. And Romans 12:1-2 says we are transformed. We are transformed by renewing our minds. Any other verse, and then you can have some other verses. You took us off. Is that what you want?
Right there.
I planned for it to be here.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Go back here.
Okay. So sorry. So Colossians 3, hearts and minds, and we're transformed by renewing our minds. And then how do you change a thought pattern? You recognize the thought pattern, understand where it comes from, create an alternative response, and keep going. Be patient in that. So number one, if you're going to build a courageous mindset, you want to embrace your fear. So this encourages you to identify one fear, and some of you have already done that here.
Now, embrace it is like a hug. You gotta take a hold of it. It isn't just understand it. You got to embrace it.
It's like observe it and go there and get close to it. That's right. Number 2, don't hesitate. Close the gap. So in the process of trying to have courage and you're like, oh, I need to go there. Whenever you have a gap, that gets filled with potential negative consequences, and you might just get stuck there. And number 3, be mindful. So where is your present reality? Be mindful, be honest with yourself. That's where these emotions come forward, and trying to understand what values are happening that you're hopefully not violating. Number 4, get outside of your comfort zone. And this is where we take those small steps. And we're just asking you, what's 1 or 2 small steps that you can take from where you are to where you desire to be to live courageously? And we've been talking about that right here. So here's just like a worksheet for you to just work through. Number 5, the final one, build confidence. What is one failure or limitation that you need to just release, get rid of? And what is one way of thinking that you can change to have more confidence? John Mark Earl last week was telling us about dipping in the water just by doing it, and just by stopping and not hesitating to not do what he's planning to do. He built his confidence that he can do it, and not only dipping, but the hard things. And tip 1 is being courageous takes practice. So what daily practice, and this could be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, will help you? What is the things that we practice on? And I just want to take a moment to talk about working out. So here I've got 2 weights here, and I've been working out. Today is day 17 of working out every day, and my muscles are getting stronger. I started out with a 1, and now I can move up to an 8, as in I can do the hard things. I really can do the hard things. I just have to practice one step at a time, and many times repeating. So tip 2, imagine you can do it, because you want to imagine you can do it. This is the courageous imagination that we're going into next week as well. You want to imagine you can do it, and keep imagining you can do it. Picture yourself going through the steps, being where you want to be until you don't need the imagination anymore. It's just happening for you. And then the last tip, use courage to stand for others who can't.
That's good.
So who's one person who needs courage, and what would it look like for you to stand up for those courages? So that's sitting there ready for you to download. Any questions, comments, emotional outbursts about building a courageous mindset?
Got a few comments there.
Okay. Matt says, that's good, Dan. It reminds me of the Velvet Elvis book we went through on the ship on our Wednesday night at 9 times. There it is. Velvet Elvis. Okay, we've got another comment here. Parents are a big factor in influencing the children's mindset. Yes. It can be discouraging when you see your parents with low self-esteem because of past failures. It can be really contagious. Do you want to speak to that about parents and mindsets?
Yeah, I mean, parents.
Thank you for putting it out
friends, there. We learn so much of who we are from other people.
Yeah.
And we have to really be careful. As I'm now going through and looking at a lot of my beliefs, I have to go, where did that come from? Because if that came from, let's say, a professor at Bible college who was struggling with rejection at the moment, those verses were actually for his rejection, not for mine. And so I think we have to step in and go, what in this is actually something I need to take a hold of, and what is not? You know, if you go to your Christmas tree on Christmas morning, there's a whole bunch of stuff there, but not everything has your name on it. And I think we have to recognize what are the things that have been passed down from our parents that do have our name, those things we need to embrace, and those things that we need to say, I'm not going to let my name be put on that. I once heard that there was a drunk man, and he had 2 sons. And this drunk man was always drunk. He was known as the town drunk. And the 2 sons grew up, and one became the town drunk, and the one never touched alcohol. And both of their responses to why are you this way was, you saw my dad, how could I not be different than this? Mm-hmm. So the one who became drunk was using the same excuse as the one who said, I'm never going to touch alcohol. It is the way we process those things that are more important. I think, first of all, we have to process it before we step out to help them in any way possible. We have to, this is what we're talking about with Zoe Life. We have to go through and really say, how do I live fully alive? Because if we're not living fully alive, it's very difficult then to manufacture something that is for others. But I know sometimes in serving others, it makes me more alive. So it's that 2-sided coin.
Yeah. I just saw this last night. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little, this is Stephen Covey. When we have a stimulus, we always have a response, but that moment between the stimulus and the response is our moment of freedom. So when we pause, this is when maybe the stimulus is fear related, and that moment of freedom is be present with the emotions and make a decision about that. And then we go on to make our response. And hopefully that is a value-based action that takes you in a good way. Like you were just talking about the difference between these two sons.
I almost
we have a choice of freedom.
We've got another hand up. We've got a professor with us today, and the professor has been looking at this whole courageous theme with us, and he would love just to have about 2 minutes to talk about.
He's from the U of L, is that right?
U of L, yeah, University of Life. Let's see if we can bring him in. Professor, are you there?
Hi there, my name is Ein Albert Stein, and I'm here today to talk about courage. Courage defined is the ability to do something that frightens one. That courage is the ability to do something that frightens one. That is courage. Or you could say, the strength to face pain or grief. Oh, that's courage. Now, courage comes from the root word cur-age. Cur is Latin, which means heart. And age means a season or a time. So when you say courage, it means the heart for a season. Sir Winston Churchill said, fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. Just think about that. Okay. And Atticus, Atticus, he said it the best of anyone, I think. What good are wings if you don't have courage to fly? Courage. We all need courage. I need courage. You need courage. I need courage. So that's a little bit today about courage. My name is Ein Albert Stein, and I, in the words of the Cowardly Lion, says, what do you got that I don't have? Courage. Toodles.
Thank you, Dr. Ein Albert Stein from the University of Life.
He's a professor. He's not a doctor.
Oh, excuse me. Did I? Honestly, we've been having so much fun finding costumes. So watch out for future DUZIE Lives and future productions. We're going to have a lot more fun. Yeah. Any thoughts about that? Courage. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God will be with you. Joshua 1:9. And courage is the ability to do something. This is an action step. Go from where you are, have that moment of freedom, and take a value-based action step. Even do it afraid. Even do it with God. Even do it with your people. Even do it because it's an opportunity for us to live fully alive.
Yeah. So any responses about courage, any stories that you have?
Questions, comments, stories, emotional outbursts.
Because we're looking at courage, but at the same time, we're looking at imagination. We're looking at all this goes together.
The combination.
And I find it very interesting that we're looking at this at this time of history. This is one of those stories that we're living in. It's like another 9/11 that is affecting the world, that people are going to ask, where were you when with what's going on right now? And we need to have courage, but also imagination, faith to move forward.
Megan says, I think having fear as part of courage is an important step to remember. Yeah. We all have fears. That is a normal stimulus, a normal response to us. And we talked about that in the last module of our flow course. If you need to review any parts of those, go into the flow course and grab that.
And last week we actually talked about, I've taken time to name my fear. I've named my fear Jack. And there are times that I hear Jack talking and I know I need him in the front seat talking to me, because it is probably wisdom speaking that I don't jump off the cliff. But there are other times that fear starts speaking and I go, Jack, get in the back seat. You don't belong up here with me. I'm not even going to feed you today. You just sit back there. You don't get no snacks today, Jack. Because I believe we have to address it. If we don't address it as a fear, if we don't observe it, then it takes control of us without us giving permission. And so I've literally taken time to say, what is the name of fear? And all fears get the same one. They all get the same name. They're all Jack. And I talk daily right now to Jack.
Yeah. Matt says, I like that quote from Churchill. Churchill, or how do you say that? Churchill. Sure. Churchill. Yeah. I know. The professor was having fun with it.
I don't know. I have to ask him.
It's hard to speak over his teeth, I think. That's what it looked like.
I'll ask him next time I see him.
I like the quote from him. Fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. Where fear is reacting to something, courage is proactively moving forward. Nice. Matt, I love that. That is such a great differentiation. It's a reaction, not necessarily a thoughtful, value-based reaction, but courage is positively moving forward. And I think you're right. When we say courage, it is a positive. I love that. And then Megan says, hit the road, Jack, and never come back. How does that come? And don't you come back?
No more.
Hit the road, Jack. You got to play that song, don't you?
I don't know.
You have that one in your head?
I didn't, but I will.
Yeah,
now.
Whenever Jack comes up, you got to tell him, hit the road, Jack.
Well, sometimes if there's a bear, like David Taylor a few weeks ago said, if there's a bear standing out there, you don't say hit the road, Jack. You're like, Jack, you stay here with the bear. I'm running. So, you know.
Would you stand between me and the bear? Get in
That's
there.
That's a good comment.
Singing voices. That's awesome. Yeah. I think it's so important for us to identify our fears and to have that positivity of moving forward. So make sure in this season that you do have courage in the midst of what's going on here. Have somebody that you're chatting with. I also just want to do one more plug for journaling. Journaling is so important. And when you are journaling, I encourage you to write like nobody's going to read it. Pour out your heart. Go into that courageous space emotionally where you are able to see the full spectrum of positive emotions and potentially the full spectrum of negative emotions as well. Identify what those emotions, which might be fear or something else that comes up, and then try to identify your values that are in the midst of that. You know, you have fear of the dark. You know, what is the values of that? Well, you value safety. You value people being protected. And many times that's why we have these negative issues, but also it's why we have these positive, courageous moments of action.
And it's interesting how fear sort of, it moves into other areas of our life. Last night, Susie and I, we had this confrontation that I still am not able to figure out what happened. She was thinking one thing. I was thinking something else.
It's not usual for us, but it happened.
This went downhill really quick, and it stayed there for a very long time last night. And it was like, what just happened? And neither of us could identify what actually happened to bring us to that point where it was like, it was down in the dumps. It was very discouraging, but it was totally about miscommunication. And we sat at the kitchen table, sort of just looking at each other.
What happened?
I believe the back of that story is a fear that we did not stop and identify Jack was in the room. Because I believe when we hit those places of conflict, when we hit those places of quitting, of stopping, of our personal agenda over community, I think there's always a fear behind it. Sometimes it's a little Jack, but it's there. And it would have been so much better last night, even as I think there's so much fear going on in our world that we don't realize stuff that's there. Yep. And we have to stop, take a little more time, take 30 breaths and say, okay, where's Jack in this conversation? Identify it and go, okay, you don't belong here. You get in the trunk. You get in the, what do you call it? It's the boot. That's the boot. Get in the boot. Because you don't belong in this conversation. I think that helps us, but that also may help all of us. If we're going to have courage, we really have to identify where's Jack and what voice do we allow him in this conversation, because we will be motivated by fear or we'll be motivated by courage. We will move in one of those two areas.
Fear, desire. That's right. Yeah, well, I think we're coming to the end. We just really want to honor your time. We are happy to chat about this more and longer. We do have another DUZIE Live coming up in 5 more hours. And we want to encourage you to come back. Every one of our DUZIE Lives are completely different, depending on who is in the room. And so we so appreciate you for coming live with us, for being involved in asking the questions and sparring conversation. And we really appreciate that. I have another question here from Matt. How do you choose what name to give your fears? How did you come up with Jack?
Well, I'm not going to tell the whole story behind it, but there is a person that I know, and they, in conversations, there's a lot of fear in their life. And for instance, so when I was thinking of fear, immediately that person's name popped into my head. And for me, it was like, that's the name I'm going to give my fear. So I don't think it really matters. For me, I don't even think of that person anymore, but it was in conversations with that person and their fear that caused me to think Jack as the name. It could be anything. Give it a foreign name if you want. Give it a Pluto. Pluto is no longer a planet. So make it your fear. I have no idea. That doesn't matter so much, but I think we have to identify it. And for me, I call it by name.
So for me, I have something a little bit different that I have named. I call my fully alive person, woohoo, surprise, right? And my non-fully alive, or the opposite of my fully alive, non-showing up person, is boo-hoo. So I think this is where this came from. I have to make a decision who's going to show up in the room. Is it going to be woohoo or is it going to be boo-hoo? And I am choosing that woohoo, like woohoo would do this and boohoo would do this. And I really want woohoo to be there. So that's the person, that is the choice that I'm making in that.
It's like, over here is boo and over here is woo.
Okay, I don't know if I can. Megan's got a name for her fear. I don't even know if I can say it. Tarquin Pontley Toodle is going to be my fear name.
Oh, yes.
Of course, you need an elaborate name like that.
I love it. Toodle, especially.
It's ridiculous in Harry Potter to get rid of Bogart, something that make you laugh or smile. Oh, these are good thoughts, guys.
It's good.
Wow, you guys are bringing it. I love this. Thanks for the fun. Thanks for the interaction.
And the name for courage for me is Dan.
Oh, well, that's original.
It is. Because I want Jack in the backseat, but I want to show up.
You like to drive, don't you?
I do like to drive. To drive. But right now, there's no place to go. So maybe I'll just back out of my driveway and then pull back in.
Just for fun, right?
Just for fun.
Just to waste the gas.
Take Jack for a ride.
It has been amazing having this time of courage in the midst with you. Again, thank you for joining, those of you who joined us live and For those who are joining us remotely or in the replay, we thank you as well for coming on and for being a part of this as well. As always, we are available to you. If you have any fears or if you're struggling with courage in the midst of your real life situations, just please reach out to Dan and I, or both of us, or one of us. connect@duzie.com is our email, but also you can contact us on the socials, and it's DUZIE Potter. That's our YouTube, that's our Instagram, and that's our Facebook. So whatever works for you, you just reach out for us.
Megan, we love you. Matt, we love you. Everyone else on board here today, we love you. Those who are watching in the future, we love you. There's a large group today that didn't even say anything. The silent people.
We love you too.
So love life.
And see good days.
Talk to you later.
Have a great one. Thanks.
Bye.
Be courageous.
We almost hit me in the face.
Woo!